So with the futility card, it says that there's unstable effort, there's vacillation, striving against a lot of oppositions in some way. So there's a sense of futility coming about. So this card says things are a little confused, they're a little chaotic, and there's a sense of hopelessness. Then you go to the 8, and the 8 is the interference card. And so notice this card got really dark, and you got 2 swords opposing all these other voices and all these other swords. So now there's this force and authority and power that comes in and says, I'm right, which is the 2, which is the sign of Gemini at the bottom, which is the twin and duality. And you've got Jupiter trying to expand. So you've got all these other voices trying to expand, but you've got Gemini, that duality, getting you caught. So the interference card is sort of a card that represents waste of energies in detail, overanalyzes it, overthinks it, overdoes it, and it creates so much interference. So I remember when I was writing my books, I suddenly realized that my inner child voice was undermining my capacity to write my book. And so it was creating noise, distraction, insecurities. So I actually took the TV out of the house, and I said to my inner child, we're either eating, sleeping, working, or writing, or exercising. And we're not distracting ourselves anymore. I'm not going to let you interfere, because I kept getting this card, that my inner child's insecurity was interfering with my capacity to do my dream. Okay, and then you go to the 9, which is the cruelty card. And this card is fascinating because those white dots at the top are tears, and notice they go into red dots, which is blood. So where your sadness and your tears transform into a giving away of your life force. So the sad places you have on the inside, the places where you are unresolved, are where you will tend to overdo and give too much away. So whenever I see this card, I always think of, you want more blood? Okay, here, fine, take more blood. I'm really not good enough, so you know, I should give you everything, right? So it's about cruelty to yourself. You know, are you being cruel to yourself? Are you attacking yourself? Are you giving too much of yourself away because of your own self-doubt, your own insecurity, that you don't feel you're worthy or you're good enough, and in that case you're being cruel to yourself. Now, the flip side of that is that when you feel insecure, you will have a tendency to be cruel to others too, because you don't feel good about yourself, so how dare they be feeling good about themselves. So you will have a tendency to lash out also and be cruel and malicious to other people. So when you get this card, you've got Mars at the top and Gemini at the bottom. So there's this planet of war battling the duality. So it's sort of like children that are abused can become abusers, or they can continue to be victims. Right? So those two sides. So because I was abused, I just don't have any self-worth, so I have to give you everything I have because that's all the value I understand about myself is to give you myself. Or somebody takes advantage of you and you go, forget this, I'm not going to let you ever take advantage of me, and I'm going to attack you and keep everybody away from me to protect myself. So there's those two ways we have a tendency to move. Neither of those work really well. So the cruelty card is that awareness of like, okay, are you being cruel to yourself? Are you being cruel to others? Why? What do you want to do different, and how do you need to do that? That would be more constructive. And then finally, the last card is the 10 of Swords, which is the Ruin card. So the Ruin card represents reasoning divorced from reality, death, failure, and disaster. Not entirely without hope, but there's a tremendous amount of disruption. So notice the heart is being pierced by the sword. Because of this, this particular card does represent heart attacks, heart diseases, problems. Swords in general can represent all sorts of surgeries because it's about cutting and things opening up in the body or needing to be cut or opened up in the body. So you've got the Sun at the top, you've got Gemini at the bottom, and so you're trying to create clarity within your own duality, but the mind is an endless maze. And if you allow the mind to run amok, it's just going to create more dramas and more problems. I always think of this as when you're in those dressing rooms where there's a mirror in front of you and a mirror behind you, and it looks like when you look in one mirror, there's a billion mirrors behind you. That's this card. This card is a warning to stop analyzing, stop thinking about it, stop trying to figure it out. Sometimes things need to be felt, not figured out. sometimes things need to be experienced rather than rationalized. Because if you keep analyzing, and are trying to figure out what's true, you can actually drive yourself crazy. So what's weird is about people that are in mental states or mental institutions, or people who have obsessive compulsive disorder, they're touching things all the time. Mm-hmm. They're touching themselves all the time because they're like, am I here, am I here, am I here? Because they're not sure they're here. You know, so there's this kind of crazy state that happens, and when you overthink it, it's like, am I here? I think I'm here. But in order to be here, I have to touch this 3 times. See? And so the mind can really create weird systems, like don't step on the cracks. I remember that one when I was a kid. It's like, you step on the cracks, something bad's going to happen. Like, where does that come from? You make these things up in your head. They're not necessarily real. So this card is a reminder that your perceptions are simply perceptions based on your past. They are not necessarily the truth in any moment. And so sometimes you have to step out of your perception and let it go, and stop yourself from running a race into an endless maze that you can never get out of, which is why people do meditation and different things to break themselves out of habituating mental patterns. So this card is a crazy making card. So when somebody gets this card, they could be kind of nuts, or they could be feeling like they're nuts, or they could be looping over something again and again and again in their head and making themselves completely crazy. And and notice that the swords are breaking, so the tips are breaking. And notice the card is red and orange and aggravated and lower chakra. And you can imagine if you can't figure something out, you get really upset, really angry. This is also the card of righteousness. So when you're dealing with people who are religiously righteous, they can be very angry. They can be very aggressive with what they believe. No, I'm right. I know the Bible said this, or I know blah, 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 blah. So they start being very aggressive, and they're kind of nuts. They're kind of crazy because they have figured it out, and that's the answer, and that's the only answer is, and there's no other possibility. And I kind of go, wow, there's lots of roads that lead to Rome, and everyone is on a game of consciousness, and everybody is searching for the truth, and we're all going to go there a different way based on our wounding, our perceptions, our karma, our dharma, and our desires. And that's what makes it really unique and special. So each person has their own way of going, but just because it's my way doesn't mean it will be your way. And I have to learn to accept that perception and not think, well, if you do it another way, you're going to ruin my whole plan. You're going to ruin my whole perception. How dare you do that? And especially when it comes to religions, you've got people that literally say, I don't want your reality to be true so much that I will kill you rather than let your reality exist. That's crazy. You know, that's pretty crazy. It's like, I have to be right so much that I have to kill off all reflections of your reality. And that's what history has done quite a bit. It's like, I'm going to kill off all the Aztecs, you know, and everybody has to become Christian, or I'm going to kill off all the Indians, or whatever. It's like, my way is the right way. And so this card is a warning that you're getting a little crazy, you're getting a little nuts, you're going out there a little too far. Take a deep breath and stop. Okay? All right. And then we go back to the 1 again. Because eventually the sword of truth cuts through the bullshit of the mind, and it gets really simple. So how many times in my life have I been figuring something out, thought I can't find the answer, and in one moment some simple truth, just some simple awareness cuts through, and you go, oh, yeah. And that's what the circle of this is. Spread, okay? So when we're dealing with the discs again are feminine. So the cups are feminine, the discs are feminine, the swords are masculine, the wands are masculine. Discs are feminine, they represent earth energy, and they represent how you manifest in the physical plane. So the rules of manifestation, the rules of materialism, the rules of earth. So when you're dealing with the physical plane, it doesn't matter how great of an idea you have, there are logical sequential steps again that you have to do in order to get someplace. So what's interesting is this very first card. So this Ace of Discs is a really complicated, interesting card. And because of that, we're actually going to pull the book out, and we're going to read in the catalog at the very back, because this is something to really understand, because when people see the Ace of Discs, they kind of panic sometimes, but it needs to be worked with and explained. So So think of this disc as a mandala with a pentagram at its center. In the center is a gold coin with the inscription to Meta Ophion, which means the great beast. It's page 175. So this to Meta Ophion, which means the great beast.
Never noticed that.
Yes, exactly. The symbol of a pentagram is in the center of the coin, with the 3 circles inside are the numbers 666. The mark of the great beast implies the many possibilities that can evolve with the manifestation of physical energy. Crowley called the 666 the number of dazzlement. When the discs, earth energy, begin to move, the question being asked is, what do I want? Whenever a soul begins to pursue its desires in the physical plane, it initiates the dance of attachment, power, greed, and sex. We live on a highly addictive planet. We can become addicted to power, money, people, prestige, and self-importance. When you enter into the physical plane, you are automatically going to be faced with the Antichrist within you. The Antichrist within us is going to tempt us away from the eras of love and acceptance and pull us into the ego mind of ownership and power. With this card, we are reminded that you can be whatever you want in the physical plane, but sometimes there is a cost. There are dark forces that move within each of us. Be aware and notice where you are attached to an outcome. Otherwise, the darkness within you may end up teaching you a tough lesson. The symbol I in the circle above the 3 sixes, this is to show that if you add the number 1 to the 666, you get 19. The 19 of the trumps is the Sun card. This indicates the way through the Ace of Discs. If you stay awake, aware, centered within yourself, the I, then you break through to a place of wealth and abundance. The mark of the great beast also is a reminder to understand that sexual energy, money, and power are directly attached. You cannot manifest money without understanding the lower, baser aspects of the physical plane. You can only manifest on the physical when you are aligned with your passion. Okay? So that's a lot of information right there. Okay? So when this card shows up, you're at the beginning of manifestation and you've gone into this place of, I want. And as soon as you go into I want, you immediately engage the dark forces of desire, sex, passion, all of that. And you have to be super conscious of it and super aware of it. One of the anomalies that I learned in dealing with really, really powerful people in the money world is oftentimes these big money power people are some of the most sexual people you've ever seen. Notice things that are happening in the media right now. Okay? So that there's a direct correlation to people who are very good at being famous, manifesting money, all that, and sexual energy. And it's a real challenge for them because they have so much life force energy that they want to manifest money and power and sex and this and that. And so it's highly addictive. I mean, we're on this addictive planet. You're addicted to breathing. You're addicted to eating. You're addicted to your own drama. You're addicted to waking up at a certain time. So, you know, I had a teacher that said to me, there's very, 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 very few people on this planet that are not addicted in some way. One of the stories in one of the great books is a story of a guy who he had a teacher, and the teacher sent him to a tantric master who was supposedly like 700 years old, something like that. And he said, oh, by the way, because he's a tantric guy, he's going to try and scare you away, so don't get scared away, just kind of keep your center, and he's going to yell and scream at you and act crazy, because the best teachers, if you're not willing to keep your center, you're not worth teaching as far as they're concerned. Like if you can't stand your ground in the physical plane when somebody's yelling at you, you don't have enough center to be able to handle learning the tools, tantric tools of manifestation related to sexuality and energy. So, so he goes to his teacher. Of course, the teacher tries to scare him away. He won't get scared away. And finally he goes, okay, come on in. And so he comes in and he says, I'm so glad you're here because a week from Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to leave my body. And he said, well, aren't you like 700 years old or something? He said, oh yeah, you know. And he says, well, you look great. You look like you're 50 years old. I mean, why would you die? And he says, because it's taken me 700 years to realize I was addicted to physical form.